There is a specific exhaustion humming beneath modern life. You feel it while scrolling the morning news or standing in a crowded grocery store. It is a lingering, unspoken anxiety that the ground beneath our feet is shifting. This is the invisible dread tax, your nervous system responding to a catastrophe that hasn't fully arrived yet. We have a precise word for this disorientation: solastalgia. It is the profound emotional distress and homesickness you experience when your home environment is visibly degrading, even while you are still standing right in the middle of it. We feel this ache because the system we built our lives around is hitting absolute physical limits. The engine of infinite economic growth and cheap energy, what you might call the industrial Titanic, can no longer be sustained by the planet's thermodynamic bank account. For decades, we were promised an unbroken trajectory of frictionless progress and endless expansion. Losing that assumed future leaves a psychological phantom limb. The retirement you planned for and the predictable seasons you expected have been amputated by ecological reality, but your nervous system still expects them to be there. To navigate this deep civilizational pain, we have to look closely at how we diagnose the crisis. Civil rights leader and activist Valerie Kaur offers a specific framework for analyzing this exact kind of cultural heavy lifting. Looking at the terrifying collapse of the industrial age, Kaur asks us to make a critical choice about the dark space we find ourselves in. Is this the darkness of the tomb, or is it the darkness of the womb? Identifying this global pain as the labor of birth, rather than the finality of death, allows us to reclaim our focus. It turns the feeling of collapse into an agonizing but productive stage of transition. This era of decline is what researchers call the Great Simplification. It is a forced planetary descent to a lower energy, lower complexity way of life. To understand how we survive this, we can look at this curve diagram mapping the 3 stages of human birthing labor. The physical intensity slowly builds until it reaches this sharp, highlighted peak. In medicine, this is known as the transition phase, the most chaotic, painful, and dangerous part of the entire delivery. Biologically, this peak triggers an intense psychological reaction. As the secondary axis here shows, right at the height of the transition phase, the subject feels like their body is breaking apart. Their nervous system signals that they are actively dying. A midwife understands that this peak sensation marks the final threshold of birth. Misinterpreting this necessary biological panic as a terminal event leads to paralysis, which can stop the labor entirely. Our planet is currently experiencing its own transition phase. We see the physical pain of this ecological labor in our immediate environments, like the deep smog of environmental overshoot, shifting weather patterns, and the accelerating decay of the biosphere. We also feel it in our built systems. The sudden breakdowns of fragile, hyperextended global supply chains and the unspooling of industrial infrastructure are symptoms of a system buckling under the extreme pressure of this exact transition. In a delivery room, when the panic peaks, the midwife steps in. Her role is to recognize the illusion of death for what it is and to focus the subject on the work required to get to the other side. Instead of offering comfort or letting the patient relax, the midwife issues a strict mechanical command: breathe and push. Viewing these global breakdowns through the lens of the transition phase strips the crisis of its paralyzing terror. It converts our collective panic into a clear operational directive. In this framework, breathing is the deliberate psychological maintenance required to sustain the human spirit through civilizational decline. You cannot haul a society through a bottleneck if your own internal systems have already snapped. This starts by fully processing your grief. Allowing yourself to mourn the loss of the predictable world you grew up in clears out the dread tax on your nervous system. Acknowledging that pain keeps you from freezing when the pressure spikes. It also requires practicing what Carr calls revolutionary love. As resources tighten, community friction will inevitably rise. Treating your neighbors, even your opponents, with radical empathy de-escalates that conflict before it can fracture the group. This internal maintenance prevents the social chassis from snapping. Without breath, community friction generates enough heat to seize up the entire engine of mutual angst. Once you have drawn breath, you have to push. Pushing is the fierce labor of localized, kinetic action to build physical resilience where you live. Active hope functions as a daily practice. Like breaking loose a rusted bolt or swinging a splitting maul, it requires repetitive physical effort regardless of your mood. Action precedes feeling. You push by regenerating the soil sponge in your neighborhood. You push by organizing a community tool library or weaving a mutual aid web, so that when the global grid falters, your local block remains functional. This labor turns you from an isolated consumer into an active participant who knows where their water comes from and how to feed the soil. The massive ship next to us is going down. Survival now means finding your crew, grabbing your tools, and starting the cycle of breathing and pushing to build the world that floats.
We have built our world on a high-stakes assumption that our industrial momentum is as unsinkable as the steel hulls we once set into the Atlantic. But the elephant in the room has grown too large to ignore, moving out of our private shadows and into the center of our lives. This is the Metacrisis, the tipping point where the stories of endless growth collide with the physical limits of our planet. The Lifeboat Mini Course is your immediate, structured transition, a free 5-day journey delivered to your inbox to transform global anxiety into local resilience. Day 1 begins with an audit of the invisible, the energy and water systems you rely on every hour, yet rarely ever see. Day 2 forces a change in your geographical lens, challenging you to locate your true home within your watershed and local bioregion. You won't navigate this terrain alone. You will receive daily study guides and synthesized patterns designed to cut through the noise and reveal the architecture of change. Day 3 asks you to practice active hope in a world facing ecological overshoot. Day 4 introduces the demanding standard of revolutionary love. By tracing the water back to your neighbor's tap, you move beyond the narrow walls of self-help and into the expansive, interconnected practice of systems health. The climax arrives on Day 5 with the introduction of a specific framework for your future, the 9x21 harvest. Who is your mutual guiding spirit in this transition, and which 9 things will you choose to do? Stop waiting for the headlines to crush you. Sign up for the Lifeboat Mini Course now. Access your Day 1 materials immediately and join the community hub where the next story of our world is already being written. You can remain tied to the illusion of a collapsing global credit card, or take this course to begin building real systems health today. The Earth is tired of the lie. It is time to dance with the truth.